go back any point in this session, just let me know. Chris, we get a new tracker on Monday and on Thursdays every week. So Monday would be the beginning of the week, and I send that to you guys as soon as I get it. And then Thursday is the one that I'll basically use for data to, by the end of the week after things are updated, if I have any questions for you guys, if I want to dig deeper into your data, I'm going to use the Thursday one, not the Monday one, to make decisions and ask you for some data-driven instructions. All right, great questions. Okay, so my main event for today for our PLC is visible learning. I've been going to a new PD over the past couple of months called Moving Up, and it's basically about change management and collective efficacy, which is, these are two words that I'm going to be talking about much more over the next few weeks. But this is some really powerful stuff. And what I put in the email on Monday when we were talking about seniors was that we are 100% responsible for our 50%. And this means that, students, we understand that students have to meet us halfway. We can't do the work for them. But what I'm referring to with this quote is that the stuff that's on our end, we can still do the best that we can for them. We can do everything that we can, even if the students aren't going to meet us halfway, we're still responsible for our part of the 50%. So that's a quote from Peter DeWitt, and we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. But visible learning is what matters most in raising student achievement. And so I've got two graphics here on the board. But the first thing I want to point out is this typical effect size, the 0.40. And what this means, this is from research from John Hattie, and what this means is that if you do one of these strategies for a full year with fidelity, then what will impact is if it has a 0.4 or higher, that number means that it is equivalent of 1 year's growth. Hattie, Hattie. I'm going to give you some websites later today that will help you sift through this information. Okay, but the equivalent of 0.4 is what we're looking for. Things that are 0.4 or higher. If a teacher does those things, or if a student is influenced by something that has a 0.4 for the equivalent of 1 full year, then that produces, according to research, that will produce 1 year's growth in the student. Now, if that's at a 0.4, if it's above 0.4, if it's up here in the enhanced range, then it would have more than a 1 year's growth. So you could be looking at like a 4 years growth impact on students. And then down here in the decreased range, these are things that take away from a year's growth, meaning that students would get worse. So if you look down here in the red section on the reverse effects, suspension, expelling, boredom, a lack of sleep, retention, which I had an email conversation with some people a few moments ago about retaining middle school students. We have our purpose here at Insight, as I mentioned earlier, is to get kids across the stage and get them their diplomas. And if we've got an 18-year-old student who's in 6th grade, because we keep holding this kid back over and over again, he's never going to get his way across the stage to diploma because students age out at the age of 21. We can't give them diplomas anymore if they start school after the age of 21. So that's one reason that retention is against our purposes here at Insight. But the other reason would be this reverse effect. The adverse effect that it has on student achievement is holding a kid back at grade level. So studies show from John Hattie that if an 8th grader is not ready for 9th grade based on things that we've witnessed, the kid's not turning in his work, he doesn't get it, John Hattie's research shows that holding the kid back into 8th grade because he's not ready for high school actually hurts the kid. Even if he's not ready, it makes the kid worse. And so that's on us as teachers to develop a plan to move that kid to high school, but also provide those supports that are needed. And that's where Otis comes in, and other co-teaching, excuse me, losing my voice, co-teaching and other strategies would come in for that. And then summer vacation is also down here in the red. What I think this means is that if a student were to take a summer vacation for a full year, that would have negative effects on the kid. But like a 3-month summer vacation, I don't think that's technically. Yeah, so that's true. Thank you for that, Sheena. Retention causes those negative SEL issues for kids because they're losing their peers. They're losing where they feel, and they're not just peers. They're also losing confidence. Okay. All right. So developmental effects down here, things that impact students, whether it's co-team teaching, sorry, hard to read, web-based learning, whether a teacher is funny. Okay, so that was me when I was a teacher, was making sure I was the funny teacher. Turns out that has only a minimal effect on students, believe it or not. One-on-one laptops for students, mentoring, background music. If you're a teacher who plays music in the background while students are taking a test, studies show from John Hattie that actually has minimal effect on helping kids focus and achieve. And then we've got here in the green section, classroom management, mainstreaming, inclusion, homework, teaching to the test, ability grouping, and reducing the class size. Those have some positive effects, not exactly a full year's growth, but pretty close to that. And then everything over here in the blue section is things that produce at least 1 year's growth, if not more than that. Classroom discussion, RTI, feedback, Piagiation, I don't know how to say that word. Kayla, if you guys remember from last year, Kayla gave a PLC over Piaget and the techniques for that. And so we can talk about that more in the future. But right now, just understand that programs of Piaget are in that high impact category. Direct instruction, self-reported grades. And what this means is where students they're looking at their work and they're seeing your feedback as well, and they're comparing your feedback to what they see in their own work. So that has a really, I think that's like the second highest of all of the potential desired effects. Teacher clarity, teachers being clear and concise and making their communication effective, short and to the point, and clear. Teacher credibility, obviously, and then the last thing is collective teacher efficacy, which is something that we're going to be focusing on over the next few months. Building relationships is not on this graph, but it is on the ultimate graph that I'm going to show you guys pretty soon. So what I would like to start with is just a short 60 seconds review this chart and make some predictions here. You can either write on the whiteboard or put in the chat here. Rank these. Take a look. We've got collective teacher efficacy, which is my goal that we're going to be shooting for in the next few months. Student expectations, prior achievement, socioeconomic status, the home environment, teacher-student relationships, principal, school leaders, homework. So these artifacts are on the board here. What are your thoughts? If you were to rank these 1 through 8, how would you rank these? What do you think is the most important or the most impactful on raising student achievement? You can either put it in the chat or you've got whiteboard tools right on the board. Homework in last place. 1 is the most impactful on student achievement. 8 is the least impactful. Where would you rank these 1 through 8? A lot of 1 for teacher-student relationships, 8 for homework. Everyone, I think there's a pretty clear understanding around the nation that homework is not effective, or that's been a trend in recent decades. Sheena throwing collective teacher efficacy up there as number 1 because obviously that's what I'm shooting for over the next few months. That makes sense. Prior achievement, pretty low. That's a good guess. That's from all the PDs that we've learned about, including trauma training. We've talked about how a student's prior achievement has no impact whatsoever on where he can go. Just because a kid failed a course before doesn't mean he's going to continue failing. Principal school leaders is number 3. Interesting guess there. Okay, so we've got some answers across the board here. We've got collective efficacy ranked pretty highly. Oh, someone just threw a skip there for that. Principal is not important.
It was the only
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Anna. Your mic broke up.
Just put a 6 there because all the other numbers were taken.
Oh, right, I see, right. Yep. Process of elimination, nothing left. All right, so I'm going to show you the results of this survey. Hopefully everyone's done typing, putting their comments up there on the board. The results of this visible learning chart, the rankings are They're already in order. Collective teacher efficacy is number 1. Having high expectations and communicating those high expectations to students is number 2. Prior achievement actually has a rank of 3. Prior achievement does have an impact on student achievement. A student's socioeconomic status has a 4. Now, just to clarify, just because this is the 3rd highest doesn't mean that all of these are, that doesn't mean it's very high. It just means that the ones below it have less of an impact. So prior achievement, it does have some impact, but the fact that it's number 3 doesn't mean it's the highest. Socioeconomic status, whether a student is poor or the race of the student or anything like that, just the factors that regarding the home environment, those are 4 and 5, less important. Teacher-student relationships, surprisingly, fall under that, considering how much we talk about building relationships. It actually falls beneath that. The principals and school leaders having an effect on students falls to number 7, and then homework falls to number 8. So there's no context here for you guys, except that studies from John Hattie show that homework is less effective than prior achievement. That's the only context that you have. But the question is, how effective is homework? How effective is prior achievement? And here are the numbers for you. Are these numbers surprising to you? Remember, 0.4. 0.4 or above means it is conducive to 1 year's growth if it's enacted with fidelity for a full year. What do you think about this? So even though teacher-student relationships is low on the ranking scale, these are all highly effective influences on students. Having those relationships does produce 1 year's growth. So we got a so and a wow. Prior achievement does have an impact on students. Socioeconomic status does have an impact on students. The home environment. Now some of these, at first glance, it might seem surprising to you, but then you think about, oh yeah, the kid's poor, of course he's worried about what he's going to eat that morning. Of course that has a high impact on student achievement. I was thinking about principals as well. Can you guys hear Briley? It's a bit like her mic has an echo to me. Megan, we couldn't hear you. Can you try again?
She was talking about the pyramid thing and
you know that pyramid? Yeah, so it's all on the same pyramid level. So does that matter? I mean, that's what I'm wondering. So it's like a different ranking, but it's on the same level. So does that matter or make a difference?
That's an interesting question. It's something that we can be investigating here, not just the rest of today, but as we move forward with my PLC package for the next couple of weeks or months, is talking about that. Now, the thing about Maslow is Maslow doesn't rank them. He just says that they have to happen first. So a kid needs to eat breakfast before he can learn things. This is basically what Maslow says. That doesn't mean that breakfast is more important than learning things. It just means the order of events for Maslow. Catherine, if you remember back at the beginning of the year, we were talking about how Joy Hoffmeister told us at Engage OK, the students have to Maslow before they can bloom. And talking about, just a play on words there for Bloom's taxonomy. Students have to Maslow before they can be expected to achieve. And then I kind of related that to you guys talking about tragedies and things that teachers go through, the traumas that teachers go through. I made a joke there, not really a joke, but the play on words that you have to Maslow before you can Marzano. And it's the same thing for teachers as it is for students. But just talking about the organization of events is what Maslow is about. Students need food in their tummies before they can focus on schoolwork. But the fact that they have food in their tummies has a powerful impact on that, and that's what this is talking about here. So, okay. So
hey Carl, what this data is showing me is that it goes all the way back. You remember that you think back to your educational research when they talked about what was it, the Pygmalion study, when you talk about student expectations. where they had told the teacher, remember the study where they had told the teacher that the students were, would be able to, that she was getting students that were a class of students that weren't achieving, but they were very capable of it. And so naturally their levels just skyrocketed. And then, in another study, they were telling the teacher that these kids, told them the opposite. And so what it turned out to was the teachers were unintentionally bringing those kids' levels up or pushing them down based on their own expectations going into it. So it just really backs that up.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Eric. Another thing that's part of a chapter that I had to read to prepare for this PLC, it talked about the research of the Pygmalion effect versus the Golem effect. I'll put those two words in the chat. Pygmalion effect and the Golem effect. Golem, like the character in Lord of the Rings, for example, where there's a specific, and I'm going to be bringing this up in a future PLC, there's a specific study in which a teacher, and we'll just break it down in the simplest terms. Let's say that there's a teacher who was given a group of students. The principal told that teacher, hey, this group of kids is the best group of kids we got. They all scored advanced on their tests, and they're advanced kids, and treat them that way. And so the teacher took that information and had high expectations for the kids, gave them all of the high expectations, and challenged them throughout, thinking that the kids were advanced, when in reality, it turns out that this was just a regular group of kids. But the teacher's perception of the fact that they were advanced, it changed the way that the teacher treated them, and they were low-performing kids who ended up scoring advanced at the end of the year because of that Pygmalion effect. And that's what that's referring to. Whereas the Golem effect is the opposite of that, where teachers, I can think back to when I taught at Durant. I taught this group of freshmen, and it was like I was working in an inner city school, and I knew that. Like I thought about that, how every day these kids were the bane of my existence, and they didn't get good growth, and it all has to do with the mindset that teachers have, and that's one thing that collective teacher efficacy is all about. And we're going to get to that in the next few weeks. You can see over here, collective teacher efficacy is 0.139 of the impacts, the effect size is at 139. And collective teacher efficacy is simply the mindset that we as a team believe that what we're doing is working with students. That's it. It goes a bit deeper than that, and it sounds really, really silly to think, oh, so if we all just hold hands and get in a circle and sing Kumbaya, kids are going to do better for a whole year. I know it sounds silly. Research from John Hattie shows that if teachers as a collective organization believe that what they're doing is effective for students. Now, if you think about what does that mean? What does it mean to believe that what you're doing is effective for students? Think about the effects of that, what we would be doing as a team because we believed that what we're doing has an impact, the confidence that we would build. You can think about the results that would have on students. The collective teacher efficacy, as its simple term, is that collective belief that all of us, we think that what we're doing is working. We're holding those students to high expectations because we know that if we do, it will achieve those results. Okay? All right, so I'm going to open this in a file share first of all. And this is a 2-page chart. It's front and back. And what you see here, this image I've got pasted, it's kind of cut off because it wouldn't fit on the screen. So keep that in mind. There's more to this chart. Let me file share that with you. All right, I just sent that to you over in a file share. Save that to your desktop, please. Don't just save it to download. Save that to your desktop, and you can see this chart, and you can see here it's front and back. And the way that this chart is organized, it's based on influences on the student, on and from the student, influences on and from the curricula, on and from the home, on and from the school, on and from the classroom, on and from the teacher, on and from student learning strategies, teaching strategies, technology, and out-of-school strategies. So there's a whole slew of things here from different environments that the studies were performed on. It was findings from 1,600 meta-analyses of 95,000 studies involving 300 million students into what works best in education. So a pretty extensive Bit of research. The blue dot stands for potential to considerably accelerate student achievement, meaning it has an impact of one in the 0.71 range would be the lowest. Here's a light blue at a 0.66. So it's probably 0.7-ish is what we're looking at here for that dark blue, that potential to considerably accelerate student achievement. Light blue is the potential to accelerate, which would be that 0.40 effect size. The green has the 0.2 to 0.3 range, somewhere in there, for likely to have a positive impact on students. Yellow is likely to have a positive impact on students, but not exactly enough to spend a lot of time on. Red would be that negative impact on things, and the ES stands for effect size calculated. Right. So if you went through this list here, things that impact the student, I've got a bar in the way here, so I'm going to move it over there. But things that impact the student, just going down this list, prior achievement here, the fact that a student had prior achievement on content would be a 0.59 positive impact. We go down here, a stereotype threat, positive ethnic self-identity only has a 0.12 effect on students. Whether a kid is taking classes and working in the morning versus the evening, finding that right time for the student. Turns out it doesn't matter all that much. It's positive, but it's not exactly something that we would need to break our backs over to make sure that happens. Boredom. If a kid is bored in your class, if a kid is not being challenged in your class, negative 0.47. Depression, negative 0.26. Performance goals versus mastery goals here. There's not much difference between these two things. Anxiety has a negative 0.44. Surface motivation, negative 0.14. Look at that. ADHD has a negative 0.9. And you can see on your chart, there's a lot of stuff beneath that, like I think autism is listed. I'm not looking at my chart right now, but there are things that would impact a student, like things that would have to do with being special education. You can see all of those impacts from special education and what kind of influence they have on students. So anyway, this is just the student here. You can also go over here to the home environment to see, whether corporal punishment, do those kids get spanked at home when they do poorly, has a negative 0.33 impact on students. Changing schools has a negative 0.3. Military deployment, negative 0.16. Television, negative 0.18. Welfare, negative 0.12. Can you guys get the PDF to open? All right, let me see here. One second. Let me see if I can get you that chart. I'll have to see if I can send you. Let me do it by email. Let's do that.
Erica asked adopted versus non-adopted care. I would think that would be biological parent or anything else.
So I'm going to show you something in just 1 second. Here, I'm sending this email right now, by the way, with the attachment on it. So sorry about that. But I'm going to show you something here in just a second. So if you don't know, for example, what self-reported grades means, and you don't assume anything. Don't assume that self-reported grades means kids tell themselves what their grades are. Don't assume anything. I wanted to start with this information here to show you the master chart, but I also wanted to show you that there's a glossary at the MetaX website. So if you could click this link, please. Let me know if the email that you get, if that link doesn't open. We'll figure something out from that. All right, the one in the email does open. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so this is the MetaX glossary here, and you can see if there's something that you're not sure about. What did I just say? Give me the name of something. Well, I mean, whatever. I'll just, like background music here. This relates to playing background music while students are working. Most often it involves low decibel, orchestral, non-popular, no lyric background music with an intention to decrease pulse rate, improve classroom behavior, and improve performance on learning tasks. And what do we have, like a 2.23 on that or something like that. So it turns out that this actually doesn't impact students all that much. So when you're going through that list, you can go through and see what they mean by each of these things. So having clear goal intentions. When students link clearing goal intentions to implementation intentions or plans to overcome expected obstacles, they're more likely to achieve their goals. So you can see here the definitions based on what the chart tells you. Okay, so I wanted to give that resource to you as well. We're going to be using this over the next few weeks, like I said. It is 1:54, so we're not going to do this activity right now. But what I was going to have you do was go into breakout rooms for like 3 to 5 minutes, like a group of 4, analyze the influence chart, have a discussion about what is surprising, what's higher than expected or lower than expected. Is there anything that has a low expectation that you might be wasting your time on? Like, for example, are you doing, I can't think of anything that might be low right now, but if there was something that you're doing in class every day, and it takes 5 minutes of your CC time being funny. Being funny only has a 0.05 impact on students. So are you wasting your time being funny is where I was trying to go with that. And then is there anything that you're not doing that could be a simple change that could have a large impact on students? And one thing I wanted to point out is this right here. Those teacher expectations that have a 0.43. And now what that means, you can look up the definition inside the glossary of teacher expectations. But what I think it is, without looking at the definition, what I think that means has to do with that learning objective. If you guys remember from a few weeks ago when we talked about those lesson plans, I gave you that Word document that I wanted you to be submitting weekly, and I know I haven't asked you for that, and I don't know when I'm going to start asking you for that. I'm surprised it could happen tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I won't do that. But whenever I get time to think about that. But anyway, a major point of that weekly lesson plan thing was your learning objectives. I had on there an image of a state standard, English 10.1.3 or something like that. The state standard was listed. Students were to understand that standard. They were to see the expectations and goals and plans for how, as a group in that class, they were going to achieve that state standard, how they were going to master it. And that's what I would think is those expectations. Teacher expectations would be those clear expectations. And it doesn't just mean you guys are going to come to class. You're going to be nice to each other. That's part of it. Having those consistent expectations for mastery fits in there as well. So that has a full year's effect, which is part of the reason that it's so important to me as your principal and to ourselves as an entire school organization. I want to give you another resource. Can you click this link right here, please? And this is basically the same thing as the chart that I gave you, but it's a bit more or less user-friendly depending on what you're trying to accomplish here. And I'm going to say it's less user-friendly because of the scrolling that you have to do. But this is what it looks like here. The Global Research Database. On the left side, you can filter for the impact on student achievement, whether it's in the dark blue, potential to considerably accelerate, the light blue, the green, the red, etc., the yellow and the red down here. You can filter for each of those. But if you just wanted to figure out what is going to produce 1 year's growth or more than 1 year's growth, you can select those 2 checkboxes. And this is where the non-user-friendly part gets in. You can't scroll here. You have to, on the far right scroll bar for the website, scroll down there. And then for this chart is where that scroll bar is. And so you would scroll to the right on that chart, and then you can organize sort the effect size to that 0.4, or if you wanted to start with the reverse of that, 1.44, this is the highest impact. Teacher estimates of student achievement. So let's say this, you can see this is the most impactful thing that can have on students. You're not sure what this is. You can either go to the glossary, or you can even just click this link right here, teacher estimates of student achievement. It's defined for you right here. There's information down here on the study effect size, the impact of each of those effects, the country that it was in. So in the USA, it had a 176. In Germany, it had a 0.95. The confidence, all that information about this one thing, but the definition right here, the estimates of student achievement made by teachers. These teacher judgments can help set expectations, be used for benchmark to set understanding, involved in setting the next challenge, and so on and so forth. So you can see what all these things mean by using this visible learning chart here. Okay? Pretty cool thing. Again, the only thing that's not user-friendly is that you have to scroll down on the website to get to the scroll bar in the chart. So just keep that in mind. It's a little bit un-user-friendly. You can also organize things right here if you wanted to figure out what's exactly between 0.1 and 0.34. You can filter the effect size that way. And so on. Right? All right. So, like I said, we're going to be using this. This theme is where we're going to be moving for the next few weeks and 2 months as a team together. Collective teacher efficacy is my ultimate goal, what I would like to accomplish in our PLCs and faculty meetings moving forward. And collective teacher efficacy is the shared belief by a group of teachers in a particular educational environment that they have the skills to positively impact student outcomes. So collectively, as a team, we all believe that we are good teachers and we can do it. That's at the rootest of that concept. That's what it is. Having that confidence that we as a team, that what we do matters.